Islam,
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 Islam.
Islamism.
I want to welcome everyone to the Moorish Sense Channel. If this is your first time tuning into the Moorish Sense Channel, we are the dynamic duo. You tuned in to your brother Brendan Jordan El Sheik of Moorish Science Temple of America, and to my right,
His brother Valans Bey, Sheikh of the Moorish Science Temple of America, located at 1055 Milton Avenue.
praise Allah. We want to
Islam.
welcome you again to the Moorish Sense Channel. We're going to open we're going to open this portion of the show with a Moorish American prayer, which will be led by Brother Valans Bey. Islam.
Islam. Allah, the
Islam.
Father of the universe,
Allah, the Father of the universe,
the Father of love,
Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace,
peace,
freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
and justice.
Allah is my protector,
Allah is my protector,
my God,
my God,
and my salvation
and my salvation
by night
by night
and by day.
and by day
Through his holy prophet,
through his holy prophet,
Drew Ali.
through Ali.
Amen.
Amen. Islam. Again, welcome to
Islam.
the More Sense Channel. We are your host of the More Sense Channel, Brother Brendan Jordan Hill, Sheik of the More Science Temple of America, along with Sheik Mama Valans Bay. Man, they messed up this streaming platform and then changed certain things around, reconfigured it. So if you're coming in and you didn't hear, the theme song and the cool graphics, etc., we got on here, we're like, wait a minute, something's different. So by the next episode, we're gonna have everything uploaded. But with that being said, before we even get into the episode tonight, I want to first raise my thoughts and give praises to Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I want to extend honors to our beloved Prophet Noble Jur Ali. I also want to extend honors to the Prophet's forerunner, Brother Marcus Mosiah Aurelius Garvey. I want to extend honors to all Moorish Americans. I want to extend honors to the reincarnated Prophet. I also want to extend honors to the Spring Grand Resurrection Grand Sheikh Timothy G. Dingle Lil, hyphenated Noble Jur Ali and Zara Time. I'm also our Supreme Grand Sheik and Supreme Grand Sheik is Pray the Ill. And I also want to extend honors to our National Grand Sheik is T. Jones Bay, the officials, our national officials. I also want to extend honors to our officials at 1055 North Milton Avenue and all the other respective temples throughout the United States of America, those who are keeping the doors of the Moorish Science Temple of America open and teaching those things necessary to our people to uplift fallen humanity, to teach them they're not Negroes, blacks, colors, etc. I also want to extend honors to my wife, Deputy Sheikah Joyner Hill, and I also want to extend honors to my children, brother Caleb Joyner Hill, sister Amina Joyner Hill, Islam, and Islam Grand
Islam.
Sheikh Islam Max Bay. Thank you for tuning in. Islam, Sheikh Valans Bay. I know we have a great segment tonight. The segment is the power of thought.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be focusing on the power of thought for this episode and potentially the next upcoming episode because there's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to turn it over to Sheikh Valans Bay, but I wanted to read one thing specifically dealing with the power of thought, and then we're going to look at the power of thought from Prophet Noble Drew Ali's perspective as how he prescribes it to us as Moorish Americans. So just a brief reading on the power of thought. It says, the power of thought, thoughts and living conscious formations. And I want us to pay very close attention. It says, thoughts are forms and have an individual life, independent from their author sent out from him into the world. They move in towards the realization of their own purpose of existence. When you think of anyone, your thought takes a form and goes out to find them. If your thinking is associated with some will that is behind it, the thought form has gone out from you and makes an attempt to realize itself. Islam.
Islamism.
Praise Allah.
Praise Allah. Islam. And that's what we got to do. Change our thoughts,
That's right.
right? Um, now, the reason being is when you look at uh, somewhere the prophet, I think it's somewhere in the Moorish literature, he says what we what we have now is mental slavery,
That's
and I'm
right.
paraphrasing because he doesn't say exactly like that, but he talks about mental slavery, and upon the investigation, the first one who utilized the term mental slavery was Marcus Garvey, who we consider as being our John the Baptist, right?
Islam.
And I was like, well, what's this thing with mental slavery, right? Because um, we were not taught how to think for ourselves,
That's
right?
right.
And some people think that, both of us, we've had some experience with college or whatever, and a lot of people think or would think that once you go to those institutions that you learn how to think. Well, you
Right.
do, but you still have to become an independent thinker. And you do that by self educating yourself. And how you do that, we praise Allah for sending us a true and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who gave us some literature for us to become independent thinkers, right? Not to solely depend on what we learned in so-called higher school of learning or institution. Great places, taught us a lot, but did not teach us how to be independent thinkers, right?
Islam.
So when you look at mental slavery, one way or one definition is a state of mind where being able to discern between liberation and enslavement is twisted,
Mm.
right? Where one becomes trapped by misinformation about yourself and the world.
Right.
So now that's very important, right?
Right.
Because now we see that mental slavery is a little deeper than what most people think, right? It's you know a twisted understanding of what liberation is. So everybody is saying that, oh, they got the key to liberation and things of this nature. Well, we see it's going to be a holistic approach, and not only is it going to be a holistic approach, it's not one person that's coming to save us. You
Right.
know, those people have been here countless numbers of time to give us the information. Now we got to take, like the prophet said, I've given you everything that it takes to save a nation. Now you take it and you save yourself.
That's right.
And so I want to unpack a little bit about what John the Baptist, and in this instance, I'm talking about Marcus Garvey, said about self-education or helping people come out of mental slavery, right?
Islam.
Um, and what we'll notice also, sometime in 1952, in the speech, we know that Martin Luther King, right? He was doing a sermon at I think it was Ebenezer Baptist
At
Church,
the church. That's right.
and I'm thinking that he had to read Marcus Garvey, right? Because the name he used the term. I'm not gonna say the name of the speech was, but he used the term mental slavery, and the actual speech was called mental and spiritual slavery, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, man, I said, man, this coin, this term that was coined, it has a lot to it. So I started thinking and going to, look at and seeing and trying to, find out some meaning to it. So Marcus Garvey has this lesson, right? And it's called Intelligence, Education, Universal Knowledge, and How to Get It.
And
And I'm
what's the
just
book
going
we're coming from, She?
the book that we're coming from,
It's right
it's,
here.
yes, um, Marcus Garvey's Message to the People. Um, and it's called the Course in African Philosophy,
Right.
right? And when you read it, he wanted people to be. He said that we needed to create our own schools, colleges, and things of this nature. Um, and maybe in another show we'll get into some of those things that they call HABCs, right?
Yeah, we
uh,
can talk about those.
yeah.
Yeah.
In a later later show, we'll talk about those institutions.
That's right.
But he says, you must never stop learning. The world's greatest men and women were people who educated themselves outside of the universities with all the knowledge that the university gives. So he acknowledges that the university gives a lot of knowledge, but we have to educate ourselves outside of that,
That's
right?
right.
Um, and you have the opportunity of doing the same thing the university student does, read and study. So you don't have to just go to a school and to be able to read and study, and we know life, man, I like today, man, I had a heck of a day, right?
Yeah, same.
But we find it's 10, 15, even if it's 5 minutes that you read and study something to improve yourself, right?
Right.
You should attempt to find that time. Like I said, and sometimes people think that that process is they think that you need more, you know, and sometimes we don't have all that time, but
That's
that
right.
5 minutes or 10 minutes or throughout the day, pick one word or something that you can study and read and build your repertoire of knowledge or how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you see the world, and how we can collectively free ourselves from mental slavery. But you first have to do it individually, right?
Islam.
So he says one must never stop reading. Read everything that you can read that is of standard knowledge. Now, this is what Prophet Noble Ali introduced us to, some standard knowledge. Number one, about ourselves and how we can change our thought process. He teaches us about the five folds of man and various other lessons that we are consistently trying to improve upon ourselves, right?
Islam.
And he says, don't waste time reading trashy literature.
Right.
This is to say, don't pay attention to the 10-cent novels. And that was at that time, Wild West stories, and cheap sentimental books. But where there is a good plot and a good story in the form of a novel, read it. It is necessary to read it for the purpose of getting information on human nature. All right. And somewhere in the Quran it talks about nature urges thee to inconstant, right?
That's right.
So we the nature we talking about is the human nature, the human condition,
That's
right?
right.
It says the idea is that personal experience is not enough for a human to get all the useful knowledge of life because the individual life is too short. So we must feed on the experience of others. Now that brings me back to what Grand Sheik Ronald Thornhill used to say, right? He said
Right.
experience is not the best teacher, it's the most painful one. Right.
Right.
Um and you know, so we can learn from somebody else's experiences, then, by all means, let us try to learn from those experiences so we won't have to go through certain pains and ills and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I'm gonna stop right there with that, right? Because that's just the power of you got to be able to know how to the prophet said, if I can get you to think, you can save yourself. But what does he want us to think about?
That's right.
He want us to think about, how we can, because our best thinking got us into some real bad situations. You get what I'm saying? So,
Islam.
um, praise Allah, Islam.
Praise Allah. Islam. So I'm glad you brought up that point, Sheikh Lines, baby, because when we're dealing with thought, we're dealing with thought, and thought goes hand in hand with character. But
Hmm.
before we even get into it, because I also want to read from Marcus Garvey's message to the people, of course, on African philosophy. But I also
Okay,
want to, I also want to reference our Quran questions for Moorish Americans, Islam.
Islam.
And the reason I want to reference it because the Prophet Noble Ali he brings to light thought many different times in our 101 questions, but specifically, I look at question number 6, and I also look at question number 38 in our 101 questions. And the first question, well, the question dealing with thought that I see first is that a prophet. The prophet asks us, well, what is a prophet? A prophet is the thought of Allah manifested in the flesh. So the question becomes, well, what form are we talking about in the flesh when dealing with
Hmm.
prophet? And then when we look at question 38, the prophet also states that what is an angel? And an angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh.
Hmm.
And we know that the ancient name for Moabites is angels.
That's right.
So when we're dealing with the word, when we're dealing with thought, again, like I stated earlier in the beginning of the program, thought has the ability to take on a manifestation. It has the ability to crystallize in a specific form. And once we project, or we manifest a specific thought, that thought then goes out and it does a work. So we often have to be mindful, or ever so mindful, of the thoughts that we put out, about ourselves, number one, and then also about others as well, right? And just thoughts in general. Guard our thoughts, like you stated earlier, she. You said today was somewhat of a challenge for you, man. I've
Man.
been dealing with it all week, but you know, praise the Lord for Friday being a holy day tomorrow. But I've been elevating my thoughts throughout the whole entire week. You know, dealing with individuals, and the workload and et cetera, and just
Mhm.
my profession requires me to work with people. But and with that being said, when you're dealing with different people, you also are being exposed to different forms of energies as well. We'll
Yeah.
get into that later show. But
Yeah.
the portion I want to come from, I'm gonna move the microphone from the record from the forerunner is on character because I want to draw on
Oh,
that
okay.
point, and then I want to make the connection between thought and character, right? So if you have a copy of this record, it's on page 60. In lesson 7, it says character. Men and women who want to be of use to themselves and humanity must have good character. Now, when we look at the Prophet Noble Ali, he lets us know that his job, his duty was to uplift fallen humanity, and we uh, members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, or even if you're just an individual who's a sympathizer, the ultimate goal is to uplift fallen humanity. But it's a point that we raised earlier in the program, and the point that we raised is that we're dealing with an issue called the Negro problem, which we're going to examine as well. And the reason I say this is because when you look at the Negro problem doesn't just get solved by you coming into the Moorish Science Temple of America. It is a job. It's a job that we're doing, and we're doing the work on ourselves. But
Mhm.
character, it says men and women who want to be of use to themselves and humanity must have good character. Good character means the demonstration of the kind of behavior that meets the moral precepts of a civilization. The standard that is laid down by the society of the time in which you live and which forms a part and guides that very character. If you do not live up to the standards in the higher sense, you will not be respected by that society. Your mission in the society for useful work will fall to pieces. The greatest prop to character is honesty. And the Prophet Noble Ali lets us know specifically about honesty in the Holy Quran as well. It states honesty is the best policy. Let no one believe that you're dishonest. If they believe that you're dishonest, you're doomed. You will never be able to rise to a position of respect and trust except by some mere accident. You must live so clean that everybody can see your cleanliness of your life. That sounds like the prophet as well.
Hmm.
It says, never let people believe that you're a liar, but the contrary, let them believe that you always speak the truth and live up to it. And the way we live up to the truth in the Moorish Science Temple of America is by our life living. We just don't come on the program every Thursday or, our respective meetings and we put on the fez, or the sisters put on a turban. No, we actually, we take these principles and we make these principles a part of every part of our lives. And as a second part, I want us to kind of focus on this evening. And shout out to everybody who's live in the chat. My wife said Iwa Pele, which is good character, and I agree with that. It was a song that the sister Navasha Dea, who lives here in Baltimore, had. It's called Iwa Pele. It's a really good song if you've never heard it before. And also shout out to East 49 as well. I appreciate that message you sent last week. I got to it this week. We definitely got to build on that thought that you put out there. So I definitely appreciate that. I wanted to give you a shout out. Now, this record right here is a record that I received. Give me 1 second, it's pulling up. I received it from our teacher, who actually received it from his wife. And that's the Sheikah's Thornhill, but it was a record from the Grand Sheik Ronald Thornhill. May Allah be pleased with them both. And I wanted to share it with those who can see it. Sheik, can you see my record?
Yes, sir. I see it.
All right, praise Allah. So this record is called, I'm gonna put it on the screen, it's called As a Man Thinketh, and it's from James Allen. And the one thing I really appreciate about Grand Sheik Thornhill is he always talked about the simplicity of a lesson. And the simplicity of a lesson, but also the fact that, when you look at our Holy Quran, I mean, this is a larger copy that we have in the temple, but it's rather thin. And even in this book, As a Man Thinketh, is rather thin. It's a very thin book. But
Mhm.
symbolism. We see the scales, and we don't want anybody to be spooked out by the scales. When we're dealing with the scales, we're dealing with justice. right? And we also know that the name Jesus means justice, and justice ultimately means balance. If you know anything about the signs of the zodiac, the sign that parallels off with the scales is the Libra. You know, and one
Mm-hmm.
thing, if you ever met a Libra, my daughter's a Libra, so I can speak to this point. She's 6, but she's very wise beyond her years, because we know and understand about reincarnation and the spirit of truth. But she always tries to find that balance and to do right by her friends, her peers, her sibling, and also her other family members and even members in the temple. But
Mm-hmm.
it says the effect on thought and circumstance. And this is going to tie in. It says a man's mind may be likened to a garden. And when we say man, we're not just talking about man, the male, but women as well. A man's mind might be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. So we talked about the thought bringing forth a specific purpose. If no useful seeds are put into it, then the abundance of the useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. So negativity, self-doubt. Give me some other examples of weed seed shit. Help me out.
Um, man, so uh, hatred of others, right?
Right? Slander,
Because
lewdness, murder, theft, everything to
that's
harm.
yeah, uh,
Right?
um, yeah. Man, I wanted to like sometimes people don't understand like the way that people dress,
Hmm.
and it's not just for sisters but brothers too. You know what I mean? Like
That's right.
that's a form of that's a form of low thoughts,
Low
so to speak.
vibrations.
Low,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
I,
Hmm.
I learned from the elders, and I want to give them a shout out. The elders in Temple Number 6 in Richmond. They were
Hmm.
making reference to dark clothing one time when I visited. We try to, if you see what the Sheik and I have on, we have on, light stuff right now, but we wear white because then I learned this actually from the elders, and I also learned it from Sheik Balans Bay. White, it actually uplifts you. It makes you, it does something to your aura and does something to your being when you're in white. So we try to wear lively colors, but we also, are very mindful of those other colors as well. But let's continue. It says, useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend to the garden of his mind. So when we're dealing with thought, we're dealing with the mind. All right. Moving on this side. It says, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how thought forces and mind elements operate in shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. So you have the power to alter or to change the trajectory of your life based on the way you think. It
hmm
says, thought and character are one. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are intimately connected with. And I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah, and that book right there, right? It has James Allen, right? His wife also wrote as a woman thinker, right? So um, you know, sisters, if you're interested in getting the book, it's written it's written in a form where uh it's pretty much the same format, right? But where it has man, it has woman in there, because a lot of times, when you look in, especially when you look in ancient literature, this Western world has um, come
Erase
to a
sisters
point.
out of it. Right.
Yeah, they come to a point where when we hear the terminology man, a lot of people think we're talking about gender man, but when we're
Right.
talking about man, you man is but half. and woman is the other half. So, a lot of times sisters might think that they're being left out. However, they're not. And there's so many different stories, but for the sisters who want to go check it out, as opposed to buying as a man think of, you can buy as a woman think of. Not, I forget the name of his actual wife, but her name is Allen.
Mm.
Um, and it's an easy look up, which maybe by the night at the end of the show we'll talk about that.
Praise
But
God.
as we can see, a lot of the things that Marcus Garvey was demonstrating, here come Prophet Noble Ali demonstrating the same degrees, right? Lessons. And of course, in further shows um we'll get into the relationship of Marcus Garvey with Prophet Noble Ali. Because a
Right.
lot of people, they just breeze through, they breeze over, they just say John the Baptist and Marcus Garvey, but they never investigate, Marcus Garvey like in depth, um, and where he was coming from, right? Uh, and it's a blessing that both of us have that record.
That's
So
right.
this shows us, you know, the aspects of the universe, and how the universe works, right?
Islam.
You have the same record, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
we
We didn't even discuss that tonight. We just say, hey, we're going to
right.
talk,
So yeah, and then bam, here we go with the same record. So
right?
that just show you, we're not in charge of a lot, right? We do have some control and things of this nature, but Allah is truly leading on, and victory is sure. And
That's right.
if you but work with the energies that we have about us, and as we all so eloquently say, the ancestors, and our angels and gods, man, it's so much more that can be accomplished. But when you put other things before that, such as your selfish self,
Mm-hmm.
now this is where things, get off key, or get off even kill, right? Um, so praise Allah. Yeah, praise Allah. We going let me I wanna go back. I wanna talk about that hold on. Excuse me. I think I just passed it.
Go ahead. You good. That's right, Brother Charles Jones Bay. Honest to the forerunner, Marcus Garvey. Peace and blessings be upon him. That's right.
I want so Marcus Garvey talks about God, right, in this book too,
Yeah, he
right?
does.
And
Yeah.
I want to read, because we talking about thought and character. So imagine the effect of a picture, going back to earlier show, 3 series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a picture of a blonde haired, pale skinned man, blue eyed man, and we going in there, and people had taught us or was teaching our people that this was God, right?
Right.
And let's see what Marcus Garvey says, because now our thought and our character, not saying that it would be somewhat of a good character, because they use, let the truth be told, the Bible is not a Christian book,
No, it isn't.
right? But some people take claim to it, or whatever the case may be, or whatever that may be. But you looking at this image, and this image is kind of like burning into your mind
Mm-hmm.
about where good come from, right? Or um because they associated partners with Allah, right?
Right.
In
Right.
certain doctrines and teachings. So that's he says, Marcus Garvey says, there is a God, and we believe in him. He is not a person nor a physical being. He is spirit, and he is universal intelligence.
That's right.
Never deny that there is a God. God, being universal intelligence, created the universe out of that intelligence. It is intelligence that creates. Man is a part of. of the creation. So universal intelligence in man was created in the image and likeness of God only by his intelligence.
So,
It is the intelligence of man that is like God. But man's intelligence is only a unitary particle of God's universal intelligence. God, out of his universal intelligence, made matter, and he made the mind. The matter is made by God, and man is matter as well as mind. that sound like that sound like in the Quran
that's right.
where Jesus and Barata together read the sacred book.
Sacred book. Come on,
Right?
man. Yeah,
Therefore, man must be in the the image of God because nothing could exist without God. As God made the universe out of his universal knowledge or intelligence, so man in his unitary knowledge or intelligence can make a typewriter and automobile or a chair, but he cannot make the universe because he is unitary intelligence. Hold on. But he cannot make the universe because his unitary intelligence is not as much or as great as the universal intelligence. All the unitary intelligence of the universe goes to make Allah or God, he says,
that's
who
right.
is the embodiment of all intelligence. So man can be as great as God because he is only a unit of God and God is the whole.
That's right.
So I just wanted to tap into that, right? Because
Right.
you know, despite what we have been through in our lives, or we're not the sum, we're not the sum total of what we have experienced.
Exactly.
And you can rise above whatever it is that you have experienced. And this is only going to be done through, you know, creating a relationship with the God of your understanding and being able to cultivate and develop your thought power, right?
That's right.
To a higher vibration. And that doesn't we can sit on here all day and tell people this stuff.
Right. And it
But
ain't
if you
easy,
don't,
though, man. Let's be
yeah,
real. To
yeah,
stay
it
in that, like
ain't
I'm gonna be honest, I don't stay in it. I
yeah,
do get my lower self, but I mean, like you said,
yeah,
shit, you can tell people all day.
yeah. But if you don't take some time to investigate it and practice it yourself,
Right.
that's where the rubber meets the road. It
Exactly.
ain't just sitting here on here talking about it, or
Mm,
it's about actually putting the work in to get to a point to where as though you wanna see or you create the life you wanna see.
that's
And
right.
no, don't make a difference how long a man or a woman been in the temple or whatever. They only act as gods, right?
Right.
They can come and tell you all day long, but if you don't put and implement it for yourself, then
It
what
ain't
good
so.
is it? If you don't believe in it, what good is
It's like the Grand Sheik Thornhill said, he used to teach, he
it?
taught, and we learned that, it only has the value you put on it
Yeah.
and only the value you put in it. So if you don't put any value in, what you're learning, then it ain't going to work for you. But I'm glad you brought that point up, Shu, because we're gonna move forward with the voice of the prophet. But before we do, it's a quote that I hear often. People use the quote, but they use the quote partially when it pertains to the forerunner, brother Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But it also they use a part of the quote that they hear from the brother Bob Marley, and peace and
Okay.
blessings be upon him as well. And it always says emancipate yourself from mental slavery. But this is the
Hmm.
quote verbatim. It says this is what Marcus Garvey said in full. He said, "We are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind.
Hmm.
Mind is the only ruler, sovereign. And when we say sovereign, we're just talking about definitely. We ain't dealing with that other demonstration.
Right.
So I want to clear that up, right? It says the man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. So it goes back to when we're talking about thought as the cause of it all. Now, why are we focusing on the forerunner so much? Well, we're focusing on the forerunner and the prophet and the forerunner, because we're going to go to chapter 48, We're also going to go to the voice of the prophet, and then we also go to a document that deals with this matter called mental slavery. But before we even get into that, let me see. Let's go to chapter 48. So I'm pulling it up right now. And here we go. All right. And it should be coming up where everybody can see it. There it is. So we're dealing with chapter 48, the divine instructions from the holy prophet, chapter 48, the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. She, you want to take it?
Yeah, because
All right.
a lot of people misunderstand what the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecy is, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna share with you, or when I say you, the listening audience, when we walk into the doors of the Moorish Sense Temple of America, that truly is the end of time. And when you proclaim your nationality, that is a fulfilling of a prophecy,
Right.
because certain powers that be didn't want us to find out and still do everything in their power for us not to find out that we're not Negro, black, and colored. So when you walk into the doors of the Moorish Science Temple of America and you proclaim your nationality, that is the end of time and a fulfilling of a prophecy. And I'm a read. It says, the last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who pre- who was prepared by the great God Allah. Oh, excuse me.
Who did
His
teach?
name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree and return to their own and become one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, that the world may know and hear, that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, true peace, freedom, and justice. So that tells me something.
Go ahead.
That tells me anybody walking around like they the great I am, or portraying like they know everything that it is to know about, I mean, any subject matter,
Right.
but especially more science or the More Science Temple of America, or whatever other organization could be out there. it
Mm-hmm.
it lets me know that there's still much wisdom for us to learn, right? And it's about us building um holistic and healthy relationships, and not who got the biggest intellectual or trying to flex the biggest intellectual muscle.
Yeah, we
You
got
know
to
what I'm
put
saying?
down that intellectual intelligence, Mo.
Yeah.
We can't. That it's a difference, and
Hmm.
it's actually something I've been investigating. You can't when you're dealing with spiritual intelligence or spiritual enlightenment, intellectual intelligence can only take you but so far. But continue, she.
Hmm. We, as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth.
That's right.
Therefore, We are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared for their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation.
So I'm going to pull up the second page. Give me 1 second. And here we go. Let's pull it up. All right, Sheik, you on. It's coming up
The
now.
covenant of the great God Allah. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Come, all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets.
That's
Islam.
right. Islam.
Yeah. And that's powerful, right? Because um somewhere we read that love is the savior of the world.
Right.
And if you don't have the intelligence, or you utilize or tap into the intelligence of Allah, then like you said, you are utilizing intellectual intelligence. And now this is where, you know, you can't listen to, or you won't listen to your brother man or sister woman.
Mhm.
You won't be
You
able
want
to see things from
discernment.
a person's point of view.
Right.
Right. I mean, a number of different things, so yeah, it's yeah, and the importance of Marcus Garvey, because a lot of people overlook him, man. A
Yes, they
lot
do.
of, and you it just can't be done, as we see.
No, we can't.
Right. Praise Allah.
Praise Allah. So we're gonna get into another portion of. Give me 1 second. I'm just looking for it. All right. Hmm. Okay, voice of the prophet. So we want to focus on the voice of the prophet, and we can't overlook Marcus Garvey. Um, we can't even go on to say how imperative it is to study the forerunner. The forerunner is in chapter 48 for a specific reason. The reason is because when you look at what the forerunner Marcus Garvey did, and forerunner Marcus Garvey, he was preparing the people not only here in the United States of America but abroad for the coming prophet. The prophet was teaching the true and divine creed of Islam, which is Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Prophet Noble Drew Ali came teaching us divine and national principles. Now, when we're dealing with the voice of the prophet, let's go back to the prophet and let's see what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali states in the voice of the prophet. And I'll take the reading. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit so we don't zoom out just a little bit. My zoom is a little little wonky. There we go. I'm gonna move it over just a little bit. All right, I meant to zoom out just a little bit. That's fine. All right. The voice of the prophet. If you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become a part of this divine movement. Then you will have the power to redeem your race, because you will know who you are and who your forefathers were. Because where there is unity, there is strength.
Mm.
Together we stand, divided we fall. That's in quotes. Now, why is it in quotes? It's in quotes because the forerunner, Brother Marcus Mosiah Garvey, is actually one of the first to actually use that term. Together we stand, divided we fall. And again, don't take my word for it. Look it up. It says, "Come, good people, because I, the prophet, sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you have now." So if you looked at the thumbnail, that we had for this program in the Power of Thought, you'll find a young brother who has a fade just like most of the youngsters have today with the locks, but he had a lock on his mind, and the key was coming to open up his mind. Prophet Noble Drew Ali gave us 101 questions. Some Moorish Americans call the 101 questions keys.
Hmm.
Some people do. Because why? It's opening up, it's unlocking a specific door, or it's taking a lock off of your mind. The Sheikh Velasbe brought up earlier that our people to this day, and we're dealing with mental slavery, they have a mental defect in which They look at the personification of Allah or the God of your understanding, whatever you may call him, as being an individual who looks nothing like them, or taking on the manifestation of the individual who looks nothing like them. And because of that, they look at the European, or they look at individuals outside of their race and or nationality as being one that can save them. When in all actuality, the Prophet Noble Ali, he comes to teach us that we have everything to save ourselves. It states, need every one of you who think that your condition can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. So to take your place in the affairs of men, it means that we're looking at this issue, tackling this issue of mental slavery. We're looking at it from first of all from a spiritual standpoint. You're also looking at it from a national standpoint. We're dealing with national, we're talking about nationality. We're also looking at it from an economical point. We're looking at it from a religious point. We're looking at it even to a lesser degree, or even a greater degree, from a social standpoint as well. But we're not a social organization. The Moorish Science Temple of America is not a social club. It's not a social movement. But we do deal with that, and we also deal with the issue from a civic point of view as well. The prophet says this. He says, "If the European and other nations are helping me, why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is by the Moorish National Divine Movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen." So we're dealing with Moorish America. This is what was meant when it is said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, or all things will be added unto you," by the prophet. And we know, based on what we learned in the Moorish Science Temple of America from our Quran, our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that heaven is a state of mind. But not only is it heaven a state of mind, we have the ability to make our own heaven and our own hell by the choices and decisions that we make, as well as the thoughts that we project and manifest. And we can manifest heaven here on earth all by changing our thoughts and raising them to a higher vibration, to a higher tune. All right. So, with that being said, we're dealing with the Negro problem. And I don't want to be long on the point, but and I know, and I'm pretty sure some people on our channel know that the Negro is a creation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
All
Well,
right.
and that's see, and this is where people misunderstand the Moorish Americans, right?
Right.
Because to the average person, they think that we're trying to separate ourselves from our people,
That's not what we're
and
doing.
that's not what we're doing. What we are doing is separating ourselves from the Eurocentric thought that created um that actually created the Negro,
And you
because
can
like
see
you
it in
just said,
society,
it's
right?
right. It's a fictitious being, and when you do investigation, that being didn't come to the close of the Civil War, right? And then we know and understand that a little before that the terms or the marks that were put upon us, right? They started changing the history books and separating us from history. And now when you hear something about, for example, if you hear something about Arab culture,
Or the
ancient Arab
Moors,
culture,
right? Or the Moors, they say black people.
yeah, yes, or they
Yeah.
try to like one of the greatest I had a conversation with somebody, and they read Stanley Lane Poole, uh,
Okay.
uh um the what is it called, the Moors in
That's
Spain,
the thing. Yeah.
and it's a part in there, and it talks about um sardine,
Okay.
and sardines are technically small fish, and when they are put in a can, and whatever flavor that they put in it, or if it's just an oil, they call them sardines, but in all actuality they are small fish. And
Right.
Stanley Lane Poole in the forward states that when you use the word Moor, really all you doing is talking about a black person.
Mm.
Now
That's not. That's not
no,
so. That's
that's a
disingenuous. Right.
yeah, uh that was some intellectualism put in there, and we understand what he was trying to say, but
Right.
that's you
That's not
know
acceptable.
that's not when we say that we are Moors, there's a vast history that goes with that particular word. And we won't get into it right now, but the Negro is a creation. So what we're telling people is stop calling yourself.
That was my computer mouse. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you good. You good.
We good.
Stop calling yourself Negro, black, and colored,
Right.
because these are creations not made by, number one, Allah, and definitely was not made by our ancestors.
That's right.
That's what we is actually saying. But go ahead, go ahead, she.
Praise a lot. So the Negro is a creation. I'm glad you brought that point up. And right, that's an oversimplification. That's what it is. So,
Hmm.
brother Skid Bay, thank you for sharing that. All right, so the creation of the Negro, this record, or the document that this record is coming from, is a record by a brother by the name of Richard B. Moore. It's called "The Creation of the Negro: Its Origin and Evil Use." Um, and I have the record, but it's upstairs in my library. But I will share what I have right here with everyone. And if you like a copy of this specific page, just let me know. You can let me know via email, and we on the moresensemedia@gmail.com, or you can let us know in the chat by typing the word yes, and we'll send you a copy. But just send us an email. All right. So it says the creation of the Negro. Now watch this. It says pick a name, any name, Negro, colored, black, or African American. Sounds like somebody was studying the prophet to me. She
Yeah.
call the people by any name, and they are still the same people. Right? Wrong.
Hmm.
The name that you respond to determines the amount of self-worth. So we're dealing with the power of thought. So, I've ran into individuals, even family members, will say, well, what difference does it make on what I call myself? Well, I can't determine what I call myself. But guess what? When you look at black, when you look at African American, when you look at Negro, and definitely colored, it does determine your self-worth. Just look at how our grandparents and our great grandparents, even our ancestors, were treated to some degree when they were identified or classed or labeled as Negroes, blacks, coloreds. And then later
Hmm.
on, I was, like I said, I was born in '89. African American came about because of a particular civil rights activist, quote unquote. It says, similarly, the way a group of people collectively respond to a name can have devastating effects on their lives,
Wow.
particularly if they did not choose that name. Now look at where we're at today as a race of people, specifically Asiatic, okay? Asiatic people here in America. And look at the conditions that we not only find ourselves in, but look at the differentiation of conditions.
Like,
It says, now watch how he switches to nationality, and this is another issue because there is a amongst our people there is a mental issue or mental problem dealing with race and nationality. But here we go. It says Asians come from Asia and have pride in the Asian race. Okay,
mhm.
Europeans come from Europe and have pride in the European accomplishments. Negroes, I am to assume, come from Negro land, a mythical country with an uncertain past and even more uncertain future. Now, I want to break this part down, right? Um, I
Somebody knew something.
right now, and that's right, brother Skip. It is a great book. Now, I sat down with some family members at one point in time, and they showed me this map. And the map on it, I knew the map had the word Negro land on it, and they were saying, "Well, this is one of the oldest maps." And I listened for a while, and then I said, "Well, that map is actually relatively new." And the reason why you know it's new is because initially the area that they were calling on the continent of Africa, Negro land, that part was called by the Arabs Sudan, and Sudan, quote unquote, means the land of the so-called black. So it's been always a repackaging of this issue of the mental issue of the issue of mental slavery, etc. And unfortunately, our people have either adopted it, gravitated towards it, or it was forced upon them, right? Let's keep it going. It says, since Negro land is a myth, where did the myth of the Negro originate? The
Mm.
key to understanding what a Negro is to understand the definition of his word. Now, you can back this up, what's about to be said from the prophet. When the prophet makes reference to the word Negro in our literature, the Moorish literature, it says the word Negro is Spanish for black. That's true. The Spanish language comes from Latin, which has its origins in classical Greek. The word Negro in Greek is derived from the root word Nero, meaning dead. What was once referred to as a physical condition is now regarded as a appropriate state of mind for millions of Africans now residing in America. Okay, it says historically, when the Greeks first traveled to Africa 2,500 years ago, the Egyptian civilization was already ancient. The Great Pyramid was over 3,000 years old, and the Sphinx was even older.
Mm.
Writing, science, medicine, and religion were already a part of the civilization and had reached its zenith. That means its pinnacle, right? It says the Greeks came to Africa as students to sit at the feet of the masters and to discover what Africans already knew. In any student slash teacher relationship, the teacher can only teach as much as the student is capable of understanding. So when you look at what the Greeks were putting down at that time, they were able to take certain things, but they weren't capable of understanding fully the sciences that the Egyptians had, and also those other civilizations that we find in chapter 47 that had settled in different portions of that area known as Africa. It says Egyptians, like other Africans, all understood that life existed beyond the grave. Okay? Ancestral worship is a way of acknowledging the lives of the people who have come before you and their ability to offer guidance and direction to the living. Temples were designed as places where ancestors could be honored, and holidays, in parentheses, holy days, were designated to do so. So we see the parallels. The Prophet Noble Ali, he didn't bring anything new, and
Right.
Brother Richard B. Moore, he cleared it up clearly that our people shouldn't be calling themselves Negroes, blacks, colors, etc., because it has a tremendous impact on your self worth, and it also has a tremendous impact on the power of thought and the conditioning of one's mind.
Now, even when you say the name, now this is just my quirky thinking, right?
Oh,
Even when you say the name Richard B. and his last name was
it's more
Moore.
right,
Oh, okay.
right.
When
We know
you
about that historically in this country.
yeah, I mean, and even if you do a deeper investigation on that name,
Right.
Moore, you're gonna find out some things, right?
That's right.
Um, but not only that, the blessing is that you read. You said the pyramids, which were 3,000 years old, and the Sphinx was even older, right?
Right.
Now, I read some things, right? Because a lot of people don't understand that when the Egyptians got to Egypt, they saw the Sphinx and they was just as much awe as we are today. And that is one confirmation, you know, and I and we'll talk about the Sphinx a little more in another show, but that was interesting to hear somebody deliver that. You know what I mean? So we here we see that the cultures that existed were way older. And let the truth be told, the people who were in Greece and when they came down into Egypt, how did they even know how to come down into Egypt? They
Mm,
had to be taught something from some people who were in Greece or long before they had got there. You
that's
you
right.
you see what I'm saying? So praise Allah, Islam.
Praise Allah, Islamism. So the next point I wanted to raise, right? So we're dealing, it was something that the Prophet Noble Drew had referenced in the voice of the Prophet, and it was the Negro problem, right? And I put it in quotes because when you look at the Moorish literature, when you look at what the Prophet Noble Drew said, the Negro problem is your problem. And he also stated in the previous statement that the Europeans are helping me, why not you?
Right.
So that means during that time, and I can say even to this degree, you know, to this time, we do have individuals who are willing to help us to solve this issue. Now, the Negro problem was not only brought up by the prophet, but you'll find that there were several other individuals for the prophet and during the time of the prophet Noble Ali who brought the Negro problem up, right? And they were all
Mhm.
trying to, I guess, figure out, how to come to the best solution to solve this Negro problem. Some people include Booker T. Washington, as we know. Some people include Webb Du Bois, as we know. And then another person that we know about who actually compiled a book called The Miseducation of the Negro was
He
Carter G.
was.
Woodson. But a lot of people don't know Carter G. Woodson. He also published what's known as, and I'm gonna put so-called on this, and I'm gonna share it so everyone can see. He created what was called the so-called Negro History Bulletin. And in this, and I'm gonna give you the excerpt that we're gonna go into. But this was created by or editing led by Carter G. Woodson, and what he did was he created this to provide at that time. And we said we're going to talk about those universities later on and later dates because we got to get into that because there's some things that people need to know and be aware of. And you and I both can speak on those issues, Sheik, because we attended those specific universities, right?
Absolutely.
So we've seen some things, and we've also, we've seen some things. So it
Hmm.
says this bulletin, and I'm right here, it says provide aimed at providing teachers, students, and the general reader foundation of Asiatic history. It said it was published continuously until 2001. The first article was published in 1947, November 1947, covers the slave senator Robert Small and his descendants, including the gripping story of his escape from slavery via a commandeering of a Confederate ship. So you see that all throughout social media now, people talking about Robert Small. It says 1948, he has an article on the so-called Negroes literary influence on the masterpiece of music, so on and so forth. He gets into Alexander Pushkin. He talks about Alexander Dumas. He also talks about Langston Hughes. And when you study those specific aspects of the Harlem Renaissance, and I wanted to share this with the viewers so they know, the Harlem Renaissance was created to throw people off from Marcus Garvey's movement. So now we're going to make a connection with that because the Harlem Renaissance, the same way the prophet said the Europeans are helping me, why not you? You had Europeans at that time and Asiatics at that time who were looking to deter the forerunner, Brother Marcus Mosiah Aurelius Garvey, and to undermine him and also undermine the prophet Noble Drew Ali and the
Hmm.
work that they were doing simultaneously. I just want to
Hmm.
make that clear. Now, the
And
article
another
that I want to
master that was on the scene, who will
go ahead. Oh
we'll
yeah,
get
we
in,
get to that. Yeah,
we'll
we're
get
gonna
into
get to
him
that one
later.
too. Yeah, we ain't letting that cat out the bag yet, right? We ain't letting the cat out the bag on that one yet, but we're going to, right? So this article right here, and we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. Um, and I will be using my computer mouse. So if you see my screen shaking, that's because my computer mouse fell earlier, but it's all good. So this is what we shared in our Sunday school with our members, and we want to share with you all. So this is coming from the so-called Negro History Bulletin from Carter G. Woodson. It was published by a sister by the name of Roberta A. Nelson. And I want to just hit on some points. It says the stolen identity of the so-called American Negro. All right. So it says, I'm gonna read from my portion. It says, staff writer 20 Grand News. It says, breathes there the man with soul so dead, whoever never to himself has said, this is my own, my native land, whose heart has never within burned. As his home, his footsteps have turned from wandering on a foreign strand. If such there breathes, go mark him well, for no minstrel captures swell. You know when they talk about minstrel, they talking about the minstrel shows that they had back in the day. It
Hmm.
says high though his titles and power in self, the wretched conceit of all in self, leaving shall forfeit fair renown, and doubly down shall go down to vile dust from whence he has sprung. Unwept, unhonored, unsung, know thyself, which is clearly implied in the above poems, Sir Scott Walker, is essential to life itself. Know thyself, two words with which the so-called American Negro must equate himself with in order to find the real meaning for his very existence.
Wow.
Why is this necessary? For this reason, he must gain his national identity, an identity that was stolen from him some 300 years ago. But we know that's not accurate, fully accurate. The prophet says that slavery existed in this land from 1779 to 1865. It says, the importance of identity to a people is unlimited in its aspects. We find that the so called Negro race know less about ourselves than we are taught of other races. This is itself a detriment to us. One can have no pride of self unless one knows his heritage. One must be educated in his heritage in its true sense, and let's look at it and be critical of it and tear it apart and be able to record it intelligently. Know thyself well studied than other people. Learn part, do not be robbed of your heritage. Then and only then will you be recognized as finding your rightful place in the world. How were we, and I'm gonna put this individual, she said that so-called Negro people robbed of their identity. I shall now proceed to tell you this deep, dark, and almost unknown story. I will use many quotations because to tell the story in my own words completely would bring forth many questions from the reader, which can be answered best by these quotes. So these are some quotes that the sister was using during that time period, 1930s, 1940s. It said, many years have passed since our culture was a dominant force in the world. So she's talking about the time where our ancestors, when we were and who we are today, like the prophet states, it states, and she feel free to chime in at any time because I
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
want
be
you to
long
keep.
with it.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right, it says since that time, our people have tried. Since that time, people have tried to mislead us in regards of our heritage, knowing that if we were aware of our past, our struggle in the future would lack necessary inspiration. With the, and she put it in quotes, the middle passage. So I'm trying to think, well, why did she put that in quotes? All right, we got to investigate. That is the
Yeah.
journey of our forefathers took against their will from their marvelous Africa to the new world. She put that in quotes too. Much of our culture was either lost by accident or design. Of course, there have been numerous books written on our race by so-called interested people. But did these books disseminate anything other than propaganda against our race?
Mm,
This led, I'm gonna say, the Asiatic man to turn to the study of other people's culture, finding nothing elevating in his own. So we find that and I'm not speaking radical, with different organizations and different, we study everything else but ourselves
mm-hmm.
ultimately, right? Other rather not permitting to find anything elevating his own. Much of our culture was lost either by accident or design. She said that again. Let us look at this statement a little closer. It could hardly be by accident that a race could lose its identity or culture, with which it is based on their beginning. So, with closer scrutiny, we see design as the key word. So, it was designed for us to lose all traces and sight and knowledge of who we truly are.
Mm-hmm.
It says this, and he said to Abraham, so this is dealing with the Holy Bible, also known as, well, the Holy Bible at this point. And he said to Abraham, know that surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. What other people could fit this prophecy perfectly? The so-called, and she says so-called American Negro is in a strange land, sinking into slavery and servitude, while slavery and servitude for other people gradually disappeared. Notice she says sinking into slavery. So if the
Mm-hmm.
prophet said that slavery ended from 1779 to 1865, and this is a new era of time, but the sister is still making reference to slavery being an ongoing issue, something didn't happen. Something had to happen, and something still needs to happen to this day. It
Right.
says the reason hereto is beyond the scope of this paper, says the author of this quotation. What kind of feeling, does he have with you? Is it of acknowledging the design or being taught of our identity? Starting early, we are taught that John Smith in the 1619, so this is through indoctrination in the school system, we are taught that John Smith in 1619 brought us out of the darkest Africa to work in North America, and that we were willingly to reap the fortune of the newfound land.
Hmm.
Or at least we believe these cunning words. When we arrived here, our hopes fell. To make us feel inferior, statements like this were started to tell us that you owe the world everything and that the world owes you nothing. Against the country's debt to the so-called Negro for services and labor was set the so-called Negroes presumably incalculably indebtedness for the benefits to the so-called we're gonna say the European civilization. The
Mm-hmm.
real truth, however, is that John Hawkins in 1553 went into Africa and in the rich and fertile valley of the Nile. So here we dealing with the Nile again, intoxicated, tricked, and captured our people, bringing them to be sold in the Americas. You may say now, how was the ancestry lost if the so-called slaves were able to tell the true story from one generation to another? This is intensely deep question. This is because on such information is scarce. Now now I'm gonna clear this up. The reason why they were able to do that is because we had something to this day which we call oral teaching. Some
Right.
people will tell you that oral teaching is not accurate teaching, but guess what? Prior to individuals being able, because you got to remember in this time period, individuals were not allowed to read. They weren't allowed to write. They weren't allowed to put certain things down on paper. That doesn't mean that everybody was unlearned. That doesn't mean that
Hmm.
everybody was illiterate. That's not what it means, because we had many people who were amongst us during that time, among us during that time, who were literate, who were learned, who were mathematicians, scholars, etc. But the oral teaching is something that has always been part of our culture as a people, as Asiatic people, as Moorish people. It says most of the slaves, after reproducing, were killed, and the story of their true heritage died with them. And that's very true, because here in this country you had what was called breeding plantations.
Right, right.
However, some of the slaves that were not murdered were able to tell of their heritage. This to the European man was detrimental. Laws were then set up. They were especially forbidden to hold meetings or to teach one another to read and write. We just covered that. Now think about this, right, Sheik? If it was forbidden for us to be in public meetings, relatively 100 or some odd years ago, it would behoove me that a prophet comes to us and he tells us to make our meetings, to come
Hmm.
to our meetings, to learn in a physical meeting or learning in a temple, whatever temple you go to learn, because at one point in time we were unable to just sit
To
down
do
and
so.
congregate with one another.
Right. And the blessing in this is right is when you an author, right? When you follow an author, she put in quotation marks. When you first come into the temple, or when you first open the Quran, know thyself,
That's right.
right? And
Right.
our Father God Allah. And we'll, in later shows we'll go into that, right? But what our oral teaching is about the middle passage,
Come
right?
on, man.
But there's another name for the middle passage, which is called the Great Ma'afa,
Hey, my
right?
iPhone, right?
And when we talking about the Great Ma'afa, um, that they say it was 22 million people. That, however, we know and understand that it wasn't that many people. We
Yeah.
do know that some slaves came through the Great Ma'afa. We do know that, right? But
Right.
it's not as many as they said, and it
No,
didn't happen for a long period of time as they try to make us believe. And when you talk about John Hawkins, right?
right.
Uh, in a later segment, we'll go into John Hawkins because there's an organization they pride their teachings on Sir
John.
Captain or Sir John Hawkins, right?
Right. Right.
And there's a reason why, but we'll in later shows we'll get into talking about John Hawkins, um, because we was and we as we get into a follow up show, we're gonna show what certain scholars did and replace the word more, right,
Mm-hmm.
in this part of the world to make it seem like that we all of us came over here on slave ships when that's the
Not
furthest
true.
thing from the truth.
That's
We
right.
have been here 10,000 years before Columbus even got here,
Islam.
right? And probably even longer than that, but that's an accurate measure when we use 10,000 years before Columbus got here. We definitely was here on these shores, so it's interesting in the words that she's using and the concepts that she's using to explain how what we need in this part. We need to know ourselves,
That's right.
and this is how, like you made it so eloquently, like you eloquently stated. There's nobody else out there teaching us who we are. I mean, like in depth. They are
Right. You
organizations
got
that's teaching
organizations
us,
that teach you, but Mo, they
yeah,
put
but
in
not to the
right.
sense where how the prophet is teaching us. And
They still
when you
teaching
out,
black white concepts, Mo.
yeah, and
That's not true,
and
man.
those concepts are
Right.
Eurocentric in nature. You get what
Right.
I'm saying? So, yeah, this is that's why I was letting you go because it's a lot of things in here. You know, when you read it over and over and over again, I'm more than sure that you'll start to, I know when I'm reading it, I start to unpack certain things, and I'm like, I think about it and think on it, and like, wow.
That's right.
Yeah. So praise Allah, Islam.
Praise Allah. And it's just, when we found when we unearthed well, found this document, it was interesting to see how not the concepts, but the topic of this was a topic of discussion amongst our people. But let's continue with this last portion. It says, and this is the sister Roberta A. Nelson. She says, I recall how in junior high school, and I'm right here at the bottom, everyone, my curse is. I recall now in junior high school, we were taught how to identify a man's nationality by his last name.
Mm.
And I found out, praise Allah, give honor to Sister Yolanda Hill. She assisted me with learning a specific lesson on Brother Hamid or Brother H. Anderson Hill. And he was demonstrating, he was teaching on how anytime you meet a person, an individual, you can learn a lot about a person's nationality by their last name.
That's
And
right.
he gave some examples. He said the name Anderson is English. The name O'Hara, when I meet a person by the name O'Hara, I know that person is Irish. He said, also, if you meet a person by the name of Tong Sang is Chinese. He said, but for the man who is Negro, black, colored, Ethiopian, or the person who's Negro, black, and colored, I demand from them to let me know, well, what is your nationality, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is an example the sister gave. She said, for example, let us take an African name. Now check this. A Kiki Nyabongo, that's an African name. A Chinese name, Li Shen. A Japanese name, Miyoshi Yukmi. European man's name. We ain't gonna say white, we're gonna say European, because that's where they derive from, Europe. John Brown. And watch this. A so-called, what we're gonna say, so-called Negro man's name, John Brown. And then she put in caps, John Brown. This is not an African name. So you see, even our very names were taken from us, leaving us further with no way in which to identify our nationality. They give our race a name Negro, which represents no country whatsoever. So she made the distinction between nationality and race right there. So
Mm-hmm.
there is no Negro race, right? There's no Negro race. The Negro is a construct, a social construct. And now the so-called black person is a social construct. So you have people, and again, back to the power of thought, like we said before, and I speak of radicals of other organizations, but you have organizations that are teaching our people that they are the original people, but they're still using the term black and they're still using the term white to identify people. And if you're doing those things, it's no different than putting a fly in somebody's drink and calling it pure. No, it still has some type of defect in it if you're doing those things. So you should just, come on and tell the truth. We
Right.
can't be Negroes, blacks, and colors, right? All right. So
That's right.
I'm gonna come off on this point because I just got on my soapbox. But the last point we want to raise, right? I don't want to belabor the point. I'm not browbeating, but we just gotta get to a point on that, man. I'm like, nah, we ain't Negroes, blacks, and colors. That's not who we are. All right. So the last portion I want to get into, if it's all right with you, Sheik,
Yeah,
uh,
go ahead, man.
we're dealing with the movement of health because health is wealth. The prophet tells us in the Quran. I'm gonna read it specifically from the Quran. It's coming from the soul of man. And I want us to pay very close attention to what the Prophet Noble Ali is stating, because there were words that we were using earlier in the program, and the words that we used the forerunner made reference to honesty. He also made reference to character. The Prophet Noble Ali made reference to character. He made reference to honesty. And these are things we need to be mindful of, but we also need to be mindful of health when we're dealing with the power of thought, because your health, physical, mental, internal, as well as external health, has a lot to do with your thought processes. But the
Mm-hmm.
prophet says this, and we're dealing with the holy instructions from the prophet, the soul of man. I'm just going to read the first two verses. It says, the blessing, O man, of thy external part is health. That means your outers, vigor and proportion. The greatest of these is health. Where health is to the body, even that is honesty to the soul. That thou hast a soul is of all knowledge, the most certain of all truths, the most plain unto thee. Be meek. So when we say meekness, we're not talking about weakness. Some of the greatest people I've been able to meet inside the Moorish Science Temple or outside the Moorish Science Temple of America have been meek. They've been humble. An example of that would be Grand Sheik Ronald Thornhill, very meek but powerful in the same sense. Even
Mm-hmm.
Sheik Clarence Prather, he's also meek. We have countless other individuals who are meek as well. It says, be meek, be grateful for it. Seek not to know it perfectly, it is inscrutable. It says, thinking, understanding, reasoning, willing, call these not the soul. These are his actions, but not his essence.
Mm-hmm.
Islam.
Islam.
So let's deal with this, right? So this record right here, and I've showed it before, it's called the polarity process. That's the name of the record, the polarity process. I not only study, but I practice energy as a healing art. I'm getting more in tune with it as I continue to go through it, not just by reading, but putting it into real life application. But I wanted to share this with our viewing and listening audience because we started with the crystallization of thought, manifesting the thought, thought taking the form, but we also want to focus on the aspect of how thought comes into the physical, as the prophet gives us in the Holy Quran, but um, we also can confirm it from other teachers as well. We know that we own on our true and divine prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, etc. And this is the crystallization of thought. It says the crystallization of thought into physical form. And this is the author speaking, who is Franklin Sills. It says, I would like to spend a little time here discussing how the mind-body process becomes so fixed and inflexible. Let us first look at the formative nature of our thinking process. Thoughts are the subtlest layer of physical manifestation. It may seem strange to think of a thought as a physical form, but it is very useful to do so. In traditional philosophies, any complete pattern which energy takes is considered to be a rupa or form. So the Hindu word for form is the rupa. So thought is considered to be a subtle expression of physical form. The
Hmm.
process of thinking is a mental process. That's why the prophet says, if I can get you thinking, you can save yourself. It's a process. But the image or thought created is a form.
Hmm.
In some ways, this allows us to be less attached to the thought as an expression of me. Because remember, early on when I read, it said that the thought takes on a manifestation and it goes and does a job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still attached to you, but it creates its own personification to a degree. Nothing spooky, just telling the truth right here. It says, okay, and enables us to see the thought as a form which can be worked with. The Buddha in the Dhammapada state says, you are what you think, having become what you thought. The mind is chief. All things are mind made. That sounds like Jesus Murata and Rainbow again, right?
Right.
It says the process of thought is considered to be a very formative one. We perceive our world through the thought process and constructions, which we have learned via past experience. So now we're dealing with life right now in this form, but we also dealing with reincarnation of the spirit of truth as well.
Mm-hmm.
In polarity terms, thought energies become physical via our feelings and emotions. And what do we know about feelings and emotions, Sheik?
They the things that we had the most of, but know the least
Right.
about,
That's right.
and that's why we shouldn't. You know, people say things out their mouth, and it's because of their emotions, as opposed to really sitting down saying, "Okay, what really happened," or having a conversation about what really exists, the
Exactly.
reality of the matter. Because the way we feel, like, yeah, we can feel a certain way about certain things, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. But it doesn't mean that your feelings and emotions is the exact of the reality of what is actually happening. And then when
Right.
people say things, and then when you respond to what they have said, then basically they say, "Oh, well, you said that." No, I didn't say. I just responded to what you said. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
And because we have reacted emotionally, then we don't even remember
What we
uh,
said.
what we said, and then
Right.
we saying the other person said it. You know,
But you know what we do
that's
remember?
where, yeah, man, it's powerful.
We remember how we felt. You understand what I'm
Right,
saying? And
right,
that's the wild part about it. You remember how you felt in that moment, but you don't even remember what you said.
right, exactly, exactly. And
Right.
that's why we shouldn't react. That's why we shouldn't we not saying that don't have emotions, that they're not important. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that we gotta really think about the reality of the matter and the issue, as opposed to, yeah, how you feel about it. Yeah, that's Yeah, it's valid. However, it may not your feeling and your emotion. It may not be the reason why something happened. You get
That's
what I'm
right.
saying?
I get it.
Yeah, and it's today, man. I mean, all this week really was kind of crazy, but the day was a real like I had to sit through something, and it's a person who could potentially, or people, let's put it like this, people who are sitting in jail or
Hmm.
prisons, men and women, they can tell you, and some of them will say, man, if I would have just thought for another second,
That's right.
I wouldn't have did X, Y, and Z. Because sometimes whether they were high off of some type of street drug or whatever,
Right.
they reacted in a certain way, and it was based off of feeling and emotion. And now it got them some time, spending some time from outside of society.
Right. Come on, man.
So yeah, praise Allah, Islam.
Praise Allah. It says the thinking man pattern becomes entrenched in part of our ego, self-image. That's what a lot, ego, It says it may be driven by desire and need. So we're warned about that in the Quran as well by the Prophet. It says this thought pattern takes on emotional nuances and tones. Sadness, anger, joy become attached to the image. The body takes shape to express this pattern and it becomes locked in our physical body. So the Prophet uses a word, the word is countenance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I give an example. So I remember we were sitting in a meeting, and this is when I first came into the time. I might have been a resurrected at the time. And the Grand Chief Ronald Thornhill, he asked me to, I don't think you would ask you, he asked me to describe a situation I had went through. To mind you, the situation had occurred maybe 6 months maybe 6 months or earlier on. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
I had a dispute with an individual, individual outside the temple, whatever. But when I replayed the image in my mind, my countenance changed. He said, Jordan, he said, you gotta let that go. He said, because I just seen your countenance, it was bright. And then as soon as you started replaying the image, the whatever it is that I experienced in my mind, he said my countenance just went strictly, it just I tensed up on it. And that
Mm-hmm.
was something that always stuck out to me. So when I read this part, sadness, anger, and joy becomes attached to the image, and the body takes shape and pattern and becomes locked in your physical form. We have to be very mindful of those emotions. But it says this. This is the example that he gave prior. He's talking about a guy by the name of Harry because he was using examples. He said in Harry's case above, his tense shoulders and spastic colon became an expression of his resentment and fear. So that's even more important because when we take on anger, fear, self-doubt, loathing, hatred, lewdness, slander, all these things, people got to be mindful when you start projecting certain things out there. It does have a major impact on those bodily functions, on those organs like your
Mm-hmm.
liver, your lungs, your heart, your brain. You got
Mm-hmm.
to be mindful of those things. It states, okay, Dr. Stone comments on this process of health building. This is another book. It says our mental and emotional energies become chemistry, i.e., physical, through our subtle energy system. This fact will awaken us with a shock to the truth that our condition proceeds from life and it is conditioning within ourselves through mental and emotional impulses. So he used ourselves. I'm thinking he's talking about the higher self and the lower self, just as me. I mean, but what do
Mm-hmm.
I know? It says Jacob Needleman in an article called Psychic Theory and the Sacred from the book Awakening the Heart eloquently describes the movement as a insisting process. And this is the quote. It says, beneath the fragile sense of personal identity, the individual is actually an innumerable swarm of disconnected impulses, thoughts, reactions, opinions, and sensations which are triggered into activity. And I'm gonna stop right there because it's a cutoff. But we
Yeah.
have to be just very mindful of our thoughts, guard our thoughts at all time. Not
Yeah.
because we believe in anything spooky, but because we have the ability to change our condition. We have to really come into an understanding and the truth about who we are in so many different aspects, But the prophet, as the prophet states, we're focusing on thought, positive, good, uplifting thoughts.
Praise Allah. And
Praise the Lord.
Mo, all of us at one time or another are under some type of, stress. and not, and it's not bad. Some of it's not bad stress, but it's stress. So, for example, I'm charged right now to what most people have to do or had 3 months to do. I have to do it in a month.
Wow.
Okay, so you know, like it's going to require. I do know some things about the subject that I'm studying. I do know a little bit, but I gotta. I I still can't go in it half cocked like, oh, I studied this, or you know like, because it's still so much more that I don't know. You get what I'm
Right.
saying about it.
Yeah.
So the time that I got to put into that is like, it's stressful because I have to do it in less than half of the time that a person who has 3 months to do it. You get what I'm saying?
I understand.
So in that, I gotta be mindful of how I respond to people, because even though that's good stress, it's still a stressful situation.
That's right.
So I gotta be careful on how, if somebody rub me the wrong way, I gotta be careful of how I respond because of the stress. And it's like I said, not bad stress, but the stress that I'm under could very well, I could respond emotionally and go off on a person and they like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with him? Or
Right.
you get what I'm saying? And they don't even know. So, I mean, and various other things that, individually that we go through. So this is how it's so important to, you know, people, some people think, man, we just read this stuff just to be reading it, or
You really
like
apply, man.
it's a way of life, it's practice.
It takes time.
And it takes time, like, like we've been studying this for quite some time. So what comes second nature to us, we're not expecting for other people for it to be second nature to them. You get what
Right.
I'm saying? And
That's right.
even though it may be second nature to us, we still are working on ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So praise Allah, man.
Yeah. We're willing to help people
Yeah,
too, but like we
yeah,
stated
yeah.
earlier in the program, when we talked about value, the
Hmm.
work really starts with yourself. So you have to really take an initiative to put your best effort forward to
Hmm.
make it work for you. But we're here to assist
Yeah,
individuals as
yeah.
well.
Because we're solution oriented thinkers.
That's right.
And let the truth be told, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was also solution oriented.
Right.
And if you have a project that you're working on and you would like for us to assist you with working on that project, then we'll work with you.
This is a
You
good
know,
project, for
it,
good reasons, for good
yeah,
intentions. Right.
yeah. So, and I mean, this is how we were raised. But even before coming into the temple, I'm thinking that your parents taught you, those particular things,
That's right.
because when you came into the temple, you were able to help cultivate what you were taught before you came into the temple,
That's
right?
right.
So, um, let's be all that to say, let's be solution oriented thinkers and doers. So hey, uh, community development is one of my things.
Yeah.
Um, so I know some of the ins and outs of it. We got a project that's going on.
Yep.
Uh,
Good.
if you need help with something, let us know. Let
Right.
us know.
Yeah,
Hmm.
willing to help. Praise Allah. So we come to another concluding episode. Again, if you have any questions about any of the documents that we presented, or if you have any questions about any of the concepts or the topic of this evening, we can be reached at moorish@gmail.com. We're also going to be moving, and again, I got to look through the logistics of this streaming platform because it kind of messed me up with the intro and outro. But we're going to be providing a G number, a Google number for people to call in later episodes. We ask you, when we do provide the number, that you be respectful as possible. Present your question, feel comfortable, to raise a question. If you just want to give a shout out or whatever the case may be, we appreciate that as well. Our brother Skid Bay, we appreciate you too. Islam, thank you for tuning in as always. We're going to end off with the Moorish American prayer. But before we do so, if you are in the Baltimore metropolitan area or any of the respective temples, we're going to give you some information. So just hang tight. So if you're in Baltimore, Maryland, you can definitely visit us at Temple Number 13. We're located at 1055 North Milton Avenue. Our meeting hours are from 8 to 10 on Fridays and from 12 to 2 on Sundays. Please come on out for the Friday Holy Night meeting, which is tomorrow. Sundays, I'm the Sunday school instructor for 1055 North Milton Avenue, and Brother Valansby is the assistant branch chief for 1055 North Milton Avenue. We also have Temple number 13-2, which is located at 2023. That's at the Noble Drowley Center at currently. And that's Temple number 13-2 under the leadership of Grand Chief Eric Thompson Bay. Please come out and visit. Same hours. We're talking 8 to 10 on Fridays, 12 to 2 on Sundays. Come on out. Both temples are family oriented temples where we have our families in the temples and we teach those things that are necessary, as the Sheikh just stated, to build community. You also have other temples here in the city of Baltimore. I want to give you the information to the Spring Grand Sheikh Daryl Johnson Base Temple. He's located at 4413 Park Heights Avenue. That's between Park Heights and Oakford. The rear entrance and the meeting hours are from 8 to 10 on Fridays, just like ours. And on Sundays, it's from 1 to 3. So 1 to 3 p.m. You also have the Supreme Grand Sheikh John Lomax Base Temple on Bel Air Road. I don't know if the Grand Sheikh is Lomax Base still in the chat, but if she is, can you just give us the information? If not, we'll get it for you all as well, and also the meeting hours as well. If we could get those, that would be great. We also have Temple number 27, which is located in Atlanta, Georgia, under the leadership of Grand Sheikh Charles Brown here. You also have temples in New York City, which is New York State, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
which is located in Troy, New York, under the leadership of Grand Sheikh Emmanuel Dr. Hill. And then you also have one in Albany, New York, which is which is under the leadership of Grand Sheikh William Garrison Bay. You also have Temple 11-1, which is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, under the leadership of Grand Sheikh Victor Lewis Ill. And you also have Temple number 39, which we affectionately call Bethlehem, which is located in Raleigh, North Carolina, under the
Mm-hmm.
leadership of our brother and sister, Grand Sheikh. And Grand Sheikh is Maya Il. Islam Wars. Sheikh, did I leave anybody out? I'm trying to think.
The temples in Richmond.
Oh yeah, and then we also have not we also have, but if you're in Richmond or in the Virginia area, in the Richmond area, definitely stop into the Moorish Holy Temple of Science under the leadership of teacher Eric Munjabay. And then also a temple that I love to visit, love the elders down there. And that's Temple number 6, located on 28th Street in Richmond, Virginia as well. Giving honor to them, thanking them for, just always welcoming me to the temple and, just assisting along the way. So praise Allah. And also just giving a shout out to all the other respective temples, regardless of what administration you may be under, but if you're keeping the doors of the Moorish Sense Temple of America open, teaching the truth to our people about who they are. Shout out to you as well, because there are some really good temples out here. And we're going to be bringing some individuals on to the program, Allah willing, so we can, show people what operational unity looks like in real time. So with
Excellent.
that
Yeah.
being said, we're going to close off the meeting with the Moorish American prayer. Thank you for tuning in. Brother Ismail, Islam to you as well. Good brother. And thank you for tuning in. And Sheikh Alazbe, did you want to close us off in prayer?
Oh, yes, sir. Praise Allah.
Praise Allah.
Islam,
Islam.
Islam,
Islam.
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 Allah, the Father of the universe,
Allah, the Father of the universe,
the Father of love,
Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace,
peace,
freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
justice.
Allah is my protector,
Allah is my protector,
my guide,
my God,
and my salvation
our salvation,
by night
by night,
and by day,
by day,
through his holy prophet,
through his holy prophet,
Drew Ali.
through Ali.
Amen.
Amen. Praise Allah for you
Amen.
too. For all our visitors and viewers, etc. We praise Allah for you tuning in as well. Thank you for your comments and your support. And we will see you next Thursday. Same Moorish time, same Moorish hour.
That's
Peace.
right. Islam